people think, I think when you're filming a show that you're doing one house and then you're going to finish that house and start on the next house and film the next show. No, we're filming literally 8 houses at the same time for TV. Right. And literally on any given day of filming, we're changing outfits and going from one house to the next. And maybe we're doing a finished walkthrough on this one and the first walkthrough on the next one. In the middle of the, it was just juggling all the different houses at all the different levels of completion and then on top of that, trying to coordinate, trying to get your vendors and your workers and your subcontractors in the shot, right? Because you want to see the roof go on. And so you have to know when they're going to be there to film them putting the roof on. And it's like, herding cats to try to figure out who's going to be when, where, and
right.
It's a lot to coordinate. There's no doubt about it. It is way more involved than just flipping a house.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Probate House Guy Podcast. I am Brad Woodall, the Probate House Guy. We're back this week with another one of our real estate investor episodes, and I've got a buddy of mine locally and a guy who's key to my success in this business and helped me get started, Ken Corsini. Welcome to the show, Ken.
Man, thanks for having me. Good to be here, Brad.
Glad to have you on. You're such a famous star now on TV and everything, so I had to get with your publicist. I'm just kidding.
I'm not sure about all that. Yeah.
But so Ken, you've been in this business for quite a while now. I think you said you got your start in 2005. So why don't you kind of give us a rundown of how you got to be where you are today?
Sure. I mean, the long and short of it is I graduated from college in 99 and just like everybody else went and got a nice corporate job. Did that for 5 years, worked for Marsh & McLennan. Hey, it was a great job. Like I don't regret having those 5 years of corporate experience under my belt. But about halfway through that 5 years, I was just discontent. If you're an entrepreneur and you're an entrepreneur, doing the 9-to-5 grind was just not for me. And so, I started looking at other opportunities. I was flipping cars on the side, buying them at the auction, driving them for a little bit and selling them, and sort of got the itch for that. Started, and then eBay, but eBay was kind of fairly new back in the early 2000s. So I'm doing some eBay businesses and drop shipping and this. And it still wasn't enough. And I was like, Anita, I got to do something. Like and so I looked at a couple different opportunities, one of which interestingly was Chick-fil-A. I'd worked at Chick-fil-A all through high school and college. They were a client of mine at Marsh. So I was in the corporate office. We knew a bunch of people. I was kind of a shoo-in to be an operator back then. Now keep in mind, 2004-ish, I mean, it was a lot easier to be an operator. There wasn't a line of 60,000 people in front of you. Sure. So we looked, seriously at going to Tampa and opening up a store. And then I really liked real estate, and I'm searching for what's a good entry point to get into real estate. And there was a business out of Seattle, and it wasn't a franchise, but it was like a biz op. And they kind of done this interesting model where they would wholesale lease purchases. So you basically put a lease purchase together and then sell that to an investor.
Yep.
And it was in 2005, before the market crashed, it was like, you could sort of always bank on appreciation. You could always set the sale price higher than what you paid for it today. And the model worked back then. And sure. So I went that route instead of supersizing people in the fast food industry. And I did 75 deals in my first 2 years. And I was like, this is awesome. It's working. Now I was motivated. I'm in my basement, just ripping up deals, on the phone 12 hours a day. And then the crash happened, and I was like, oh crap, am I have to quit all this and go back to the corporate world? And what is that going to look like?
Yeah.
And it slowly, I remember over the course of 2007 to 8, as everything sort of collapsing, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do next. All of a sudden I realized that, wow, everybody else in this business is out of business because they all held real estate. And that real estate was then upside down. And luckily for me, it was really assignment. I was doing assignments. I wasn't really buying. So I wasn't getting stung like everybody else. And it was like, there's houses for sale on the MLS today for $30,000. Wait a second. There's an opportunity here.
Yeah.
And in Atlanta, that's really, I shifted my business to, well, let me do kind of what I've been doing. I'll buy these houses. I'll fix them up. And then I'll still do lease purchases, and then I'll sell them to investors at a much greater markup than what I've been doing with assignments.
Mm-hmm.
And it really became the turnkey model. Nobody was calling it turnkey at the time. I didn't know it was, it was sort of formulating organically around the country. And I was just one of the guys that was doing it here in Atlanta.
Yep.
And and then scaled that up. I started hiring people. And I mean, next thing you know, we're doing 100 deals a year. We're literally bringing busloads of investors to Atlanta, doing bus tours of our properties, selling 20 houses in a weekend. I mean, it was the Wild West. It was nuts.
Yep.
And so that really launched, our business, doing just a lot of real estate. And then over, the teens, the 2010 all the way to 2020, it was just the market was changing. And for us, it shifted kind of away from turnkey into just a traditional flipping market.
Yep.
It went from, buying houses off the MLS and HUD Home Store to having to figure out how to buy them off market. It went from us having the pick of the litter to competing with hedge funds and how do you get it? And really hedge funds were buying up anything and everything. So again, we had to be more creative and more nimble and how do you buy off market? And so we became more of a flipping business during that time. I mean, again, high level, we started building houses too. I actually went back to school during the downturn. I was like, never a better time to go get education than when there's a downturn. So I went to Georgia Tech, got a master's degree in building construction. Came out of that, started building houses, and then 2017 or so, our first show aired, and of course that changed everything. I know we're going to talk a little bit about brand building, but of course, having your company name splashed all over HGTV certainly helped in terms of brand building.
Fuel on the fire a little bit. Yeah, you bought your very first new construction house you ever built.
That's right. I forget. That's right. You did.
I bought it.
Yeah. I forgot. That's right.
That's how we met. Yeah.
That's how we met. Yeah.
So for the audience, that's how Ken and I met. So back in 2015, I was kind of like dabbling in real estate, right? Like trying to figure out what I'm going to do and read the books and the podcasts and all that stuff. And my wife and I go to sell the house that we bought in 2007, and I was still upside down on that house. I sold it for like $4,000 less than I bought it for, right? In 2015. So it kind of came back, but we were buying a new house, right? We had just gotten married and we were having kids and we needed a bigger house, right? The little 3-bedroom ranch wasn't going to cut it anymore. So we drove around and found this house and made an offer on it. At the time, my grandfather's wife, I call her my grandmother died when I was younger and he got remarried, and she's a real estate agent. And we made an offer, and then I saw your name on the contract at the bottom. And I was like, oh, let me Google Ken Corsini. I don't, who is this guy, right? I didn't know who you were. And then I saw Bigger Pockets. And at that time you were contributing on Bigger Pockets, and I was also on Bigger Pockets. And I was like, cool, let me reach out to Ken. Hey, I'm buying your house, And then we started chatting, and then you helped me with my first deal I did in 2016. I called you up because I got it under contract, and I was like, what do I do? I don't know.
That's right. Yeah.
I don't know what to do.
In Birmingham, right? That was your first.
No. It was that little mill house in Canton. Okay. That little mill house. I ended up buying it for like $30,000, and I wholetailed it by accident. You tried to find a buyer for me. No one wanted to buy it. And then I wholetailed it and I sold it for $42,000. So I ended up.
There you go. And you're off to the races.
That's right. So yeah, that's how you and I met. And since then we've done tons of deals together. We've had LLC partnerships together and done a few development deals together and all the above. So
you're the reason that I tell, one of the reasons that I tell like our franchisees and other people that I talk to is that the other wholesalers in your market are not your competition. They're your next partner.
Yep.
To me, that is such an important principle, because people come into this business and they just assume, oh man, look at all this competition. They're not. Yes, you're swimming in the same swimming pool, but they're really legitimately your next purchaser, buyer, business partner, all of the above, because there's just so much opportunity when you work together.
Definitely. Yeah. You and I collectively together have made hundreds of thousands of dollars in profit off of deals over the years. So, our very first one, I think, was in 2018 that we did together. That was the Birmingham deal that was on the TV show that we split it up. I didn't know how to, I knew this was opportunity. I knew that we could split this up. It was a killer location. We got that thing for a smoking deal.
They were ridiculous.
Even looking back, even the debacle on the backside, which we won't get into on this, we still made like a good chunk of money on that deal.
There's still plenty of money to be made. Yeah. Certain municipalities are harder to work with than others. We'll leave it at that.
That's right. So yeah, man. So you were doing you accidentally stumbled into the turnkey business, right? You had built a brand around that, right? So
Sure.
Georgia Residential Partners, right, was your brand. Like, when did you start thinking about like the brand in that aspect? Like, where was like, okay, like this is a thing. Let's lean into this.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's funny, even looking back now, like what a crappy name, Georgia Residential Partners. It's funny when I see most people don't even realize that all they know us by is Red Barn. But early on, we didn't operate our primary business by Red Barn. It was just this mundane, generic sounding Georgia Residential Partners. But we were really we were branding ourselves to investors. And so this idea of partnering with investors to help them achieve some, the cash flow and equity and wealth building and all those things. And even our logo sort of indicated, like the logo was Georgia and it had like these bars that were increasing. So it looked like, you're growing your wealth in the state of Georgia. That was sort of the idea of our branding at the time. And early on, it's interesting. I remember now early on, I wasn't licensed. In fact, I've never been licensed. Anita's licensed. So I always had that license arm if I needed it. But funny, I mean, growing a turnkey business, we were better off not being licensed. Sure. Because we were paying kickbacks to aggregators, which is a very much a part of the business. And it's not a big deal if you're not licensed. I mean, you can pay referral fees to whoever you want.
Yep.
When the second you're licensed, then it changes everything. But I didn't want to have anything real estate related in the name. It was important that it be, generic enough to not sound like there was a connotation towards real estate or realty or any of that, because we were not licensed, which is why we left the name out. It's just Georgia Residential Partners. But again, early on, the branding for us was more just, how do we appeal to investors around the country that want to buy from us? And then of course, that changed as we started to get a show and different opportunities were opening up for us to do new construction and a brokerage and all those things. I distinctly remember Anita and I were stuck at the airport in Bozeman, Montana. We still tell this story. We had a flight out of Billings. It got canceled. We jumped in a rental car, drove to Bozeman. We were hanging out at the Bozeman airport trying to catch a flight back home. And we're just thinking about branding. We're like, okay, we're about to be on TV. Like, we need to think through, like, how do we really put a brand out there that we could get behind nationally that can open doors to other industries and markets and whatnot? And we had an LLC called it was like Red Barn Holding Group or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I worked out of Red Barn. We had a Red Barn early. That was where the office was. That's where we started. It was in my backyard. It was
not red anymore.
It's not. Yeah. Well, it's funny. You know Amy, right? That bought our old house. It's still the Red Barn is still there. We've taken pictures in front of it.
Yeah.
That was the original Red Barn.
Yeah.
And so we're like, well, what's the brand that we can get behind? And for us, it was like, well, we've already kind of got this going. Maybe that would make a good and that's really where the decision was made. Like, let's transition our business and branding and that was probably 2015 or 16, somewhere in there, right before the show was going to air.
Yep. Nice. Love it. And now love it.
And now, it's been a brand that we can lean into. And it's funny now when we tell people that the old brand was Georgia Residential Partners, they're like, what? That's horrible.
That's funny. Love it. And you've had some of the same employees also, to note, since the early days, right? So once you got to touch on, getting good people and the importance of that, right? Like, I know some of your employees that work for you today have worked for you for years, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think partly we've just been really lucky and blessed to have found good people that, and obviously a big part of that just the culture we're trying to create, and you bring good people in and they help, sort of further enhance the culture. And I've got, I don't know, 2 or 3, maybe one, 2. Let's see, Jessica and Dave, they were in the barn. It's funny. It's always who was in the barn, who was in the Red Barn back in the day. And I'm telling you, the old Red Barn was gross. I mean, it was about as minimalist and simple as you can have and operate a business out of. But Dave was in the barn with me, and Jessica was in the barn with me. And like the fact that they even hung in there, I mean, in those working conditions and environment, it's pretty amazing. But now, it's funny. Now every time we introduce them to anybody, it's like, well, they were in the original Red Barn. They're the old school, the OGs. But But to your point, yeah, I mean, hiring and bringing the right people that fit the culture that you're trying to create is everything. It makes a huge difference.
They help further your brand, right? Like you're the face of the brand, but there's still a lot of people behind the scenes that are helping to grow the brand. And like I've had employees for many, many years, some of the same employees for years, and take care of them. And, we are in this together, it's in a mission together. So
totally.
So TV changed your world, right? Like, I mean, how did that come about? Like, where did they just come out of the blue, or were you intentionally doing that?
No, totally out of the blue. We'd had a couple different production companies call us over the years because, again, at the time we had a pretty good web presence. It's funny. So it was really before social. Everybody gets discovered on social now. This was sort of before social took off. It was more like if you're trying to figure out who's in business, production companies would just Google like real estate investing in Atlanta, and our website would pop up. So that's how people were finding us. And we'd even kind of, the first couple calls we got were like, whatever, buzz off. We're not interested. Just, I got too much going on to worry about this.
Right.
And it was funny. They just hit us on the right day at the right time. It was 2015. And actually the story that Anita would tell you is, I think the only reason we were even open to it is because we had just come off of this insane year, 2014, where our son had been diagnosed with cancer. Yep. We had gone through just the heaviest of heavy treatments. But he was on the mend. Like it was intense and it's heavy, but like the prognosis was good. He was kind of through chemo. He was doing good. He's on the amend. And we sort of felt like, you know what, we kind of got a new lease on life a little bit. Mm-hmm. And we're just like, you know what, let's live life to the fullest. That's kind of, I think, where our heads were at. And so this call sort of landed right there for us. And, it was just a random out of the blue, hey, have you ever thought about, and I was sort of like, nah, mate, whatever, not really. How about you just do the Skype interview with us and we'll tell you a little bit more about it. We'll get to know you and your wife a little bit better. And so we did a Skype, again, this is before Zoom. This was Skype. This is when people were doing Skype. We did a Skype interview, 2015. Neither of us took it seriously. They loved it. They packaged it up, shipped it over to HGTV. HGTV said, ooh, I like this couple. Let's do a sizzle reel. Mm-hmm. So sizzle reel is like a 4-minute, just this is who they are. Do we want to invest in a pilot? And so the summer of 2015, they came down, they shot up a pilot or a sizzle reel with us for 2 days. Mm-hmm. That was a 4-minute video that they, again, went back to HGTV, who said, okay, let's greenlight a pilot. Later that year, we're shooting a pilot episode. It was, at the time, they were operating under the name Flipping the South.
Yep.
And then that pilot aired the following year. And again, I guess they got enough eyeballs and enough people hung in there till the end of the show that they greenlit a series. And the series then, I guess was 2016 we filmed, aired in 2017. But that, as you know, got folded into a franchise for Flip or Flop. So Flip or Flop was a big series for them. And they're like, well, this is such a good series. Let's do some spinoffs. And so they did a Vegas and they did a Texas and then they did Atlanta. They did a Nashville. And so we sort of got caught in that and ended up part of that franchise and did 2 seasons of Flip or Flop Atlanta.
And you've done some other shows since then. And so talk about just, flipping and then flipping on TV. What's obviously TV's a whole nother ball game, right?
Oh, it's a whole other ball game. Yeah. So, if you're going to flip a house on TV, you're not going to go on TV and like wholesale a house, right? Nobody cares about your wholesale. It's boring, and especially, a well-oiled machine, in the flipping world is something that's using all the same materials, right? And you're taking it from one job to the next, the same tile, it's the same countertop. Well, that doesn't fly on TV. And so for us, every house had to be just this amazing design plan behind it and it had to be unique from the other ones in the same series and same season. And so there was just a lot more planning and probably a little over the top in terms of the renovation because you just had to have this wow factor from the beginning to the end. I will say, if we want to get behind the scenes a little bit, it's a little bit of movie magic. Yeah. One of the beautiful things about filming is that, there's a lot of vendors out there that want to get their material and their, displayed on TV. And so we get donations. And so we were really good. We were really frugal. I mean, there's companies out there that just source these sorts of vendor relationships. And they will tell you, we were like the best in the business because we were so frugal, like cutting deals and finding ways to get material in the show. And so the advantage for us was that, we were able to get a lot of donated material, which helped a lot, but also like really nice high-end stuff that put into these houses.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the house next door to me, I mean, you guys, we probably had, what do you think, $50,000 worth of materials from that house donated?
Maybe.
I bet.
What all we got to, I mean,
$130,000. Like that was the basis like line item. And
yeah,
I mean, we got a ton of stuff. Ironically, you got all those Kichler lights. The people that bought the house, the girl who originally bought it, she sold it. She's getting married, and a new couple lives there now. And they got rid of a bunch of the Kichler lights. And I was like, do you know how expensive those lights are?
I have no idea. Well, they should have been expensive. They didn't cost us anything.
Right. Yeah.
That was Flipping Showdown. So I guess that was 2021. We did the Flipping Showdown where we had 3 different contestants come to Atlanta. And they flipped our houses, and that was a lot of fun. And you and I got to partner on one of the houses for the show. And then you ended up, crazy enough, building your house next door to one of the houses that we did. And
yeah, well, you had reached out to me earlier in the year, and you were trying to source some deals, right?
Yeah.
So I had all these things in the pipeline, and then I had reached out to you about, I was going to buy that house, right? And I was going to build my house there where that house is. And then my wife was like, I don't really like this lot. I didn't care for it all that much. She's like, I want the lot next to it. So the family, this was a probate inheritance deal. And I did a whole podcast episode where I broke down all the numbers and all that stuff. But the family was like, well, we want to sell all the land, not just a piece of it. So it was like, okay, well, I'm not capable of taking that. I've never done a subdivision before. Let me call Ken, because Ken has done a gazillion subdivisions in our county. He knows the ins and outs of it, right? And I called you. I was like, hey, I'm going to bring you in on this deal. You just be my advisor, and, we'll split some profits. And, I want to build my house here, like right here, and it all worked out in the end. I mean, we still did very, very well on that deal. And I learned a lot. I mean, I probably did 90% of the work on the subdivision and all that. You guys were just there as like my advisor to like, I'd call Nathan, hey, what do I do here? Yeah. So, and then I learned that the surveyor does most of the heavy lifting and that stuff like that. Right.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and this house was not even going to be, we were going to tear it down.
It was borderline tear down. Yeah. Honestly, were it not for the show, it probably would have been a tear down.
It would have been. Yeah. And, but the other house, I had another house in the pipeline that was stuck in probate, and it wasn't going to be finished in time. And we had ordered all the materials for it, because I remember you ended up selling that house to Dina afterwards and selling her the windows and all the other donated materials. Cause we had already, we had to order it so far ahead of time. Yeah. And then it didn't finish probate in time before filming started. So we had to nix that one. And we're like, oh, okay, well, this is another heavy rehab. We'll do this one.
Yeah. Well, to your question too about filming, it's chaotic, man. It just is behind the scenes, because people think, I think when you're filming a show that you're doing one house and then you're going to finish that house and start on the next house and film the next show. No, we're filming literally 8 houses at the same time for TV. Right. And literally on any given day of filming, we're changing outfits and going from one house to the next. And maybe we're doing a finished walkthrough on this one and the first walkthrough on the next one. In the middle of it was just juggling all the different houses at all the different levels of completion and then on top of that, trying to coordinate, trying to get your vendors and your workers and your subcontractors in the shot, right? Because you want to see the roof go on. And so you have to know when they're going to be there to film them putting the roof on. And it's like, herding cats to try to figure out who's going to be when, where, and
right.
It's a lot to coordinate. There's no doubt about it. It is way more involved than just flipping a house.
And flipping houses are herding cats in and of itself, right? I mean,
yes, this is
especially at any scale, So, and then the days, I remember I was an extra on a few of your episodes, and it was that was a long day.
Long days. They really, I remember coming home from filming most days and just like crashing and being like, I'm zapped. And because just being on too, like being on camera and like being on for 8 hours, it just wears the heck out of you. I mean, I hand it to actors and people that, they'll do these 14-hour days. I don't know how they do it, because it's really exhausting to be on and mentally sharp for that long.
Sure. But that opened up so much more for you, right? Like that opened up a whole nother world for you guys and, exploded your brand. So why don't you, like, how did that, I'm sure all that was happening fast. Were you like strategically thinking about this, or did things just kind of naturally happen as you have a bunch of different little sub brands and spinoffs and stuff?
Sure. I'd like to say that I, had some amazing strategic brain that saw it all at the outset.
Right.
I think all we knew was, okay, this Red Barn is a good, nobody else has really run with it. Let's trademark this and run with it. And so a lot of opportunities sort of happened organically. You'd meet people and you'd hit it off and you'd be like, hey, I don't have a brokerage, but I'd love, this might be a great way to build a brokerage. And hey, the show's taking off. Let's do it together. And same with the construction is taken. And so some of it happened organically, and as opportunities arose with certain people. Again, for us, what I discovered is if as long as Anita and I are building the brand on TV, then we can leverage that brand to build multiple businesses with the right partners. Yeah. Because we can't be in the weeds on every business. That doesn't make any sense. But if we can find really good partners that we trust and buy into the brand, then we can build something together. And that's sort of how these different these verticals have kind of come out of Red Barn.
Nice. And then over the years, as you built those out, you've kind of stepped into a different role of kind of a 30,000 foot view, right? Like, hey, you're managing relationships with your partners now instead of you managing the business directly. So I'm sure that had to bring some different skill sets out in you, as a person, right?
Yeah, man, I wish I could say that I always stayed at the 30,000 foot view. I'm still, man, I get pulled into the weeds all the time. It's the nature of the business. Yeah. And I don't mind. I love being in the trenches. I really do. It's, to me, just being alongside other good people and, building businesses. I don't mind getting on the road and doing morning shows and, doing events. And again, just rolling up our sleeves and building businesses is fun to me. It's super fulfilling. But yeah, for the most part, I try to, manage at the 30,000 foot view, kind of alongside my partners.
Right.
But at the same time, when you're growing new businesses sometimes, and you've got the sort of the expertise and the knowledge, you got to roll up your sleeves and get involved. And I don't mind doing that.
Yeah. Well, I learned, like, I started going to masterminds and I was like, oh, everyone's like, scale, get out of the business. And it's like, I started like trying to do that. And I was like, no, I actually like doing some of this stuff. Like, it gives me something to do every day because I'm so ADD. Like, I can't sit around on the beach. I can sit on the beach for 5 minutes and I'm like, all right, I got to do something. With my wife. Like, I can't sit still.
That's hilarious. I can do it. I can detach for about a week. You give me a week and I'll read a good book and I'll try to unwind. But then I get the itch. By the end, you're like, okay, I got to get back into it.
Well, your kids are older, so you can sit on the beach and read a book. Mine are still little. I can't sit on the beach and read a book.
This is true. Yeah. And I'm only just now getting to, and even kind of not really. It's still, I still, there's expectations that I'm throwing the football on the beach for 7 hours straight. Yeah. I'm still kind of there.
Rocco, my arm, it hurts so bad.
Yeah, I know. My shoulder, dude. I'm old, man. It hurts. Come on.
Oh, well, Rocco's at the age now, he's trying to impress girls, right? So he's got to be throwing that football on the beach,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's got to get armies. The poor guy just broke his arm. It's breaking my heart that he broke his arm. And his dad's got a torn labrum. And so, like, between the two of us, man, we're a mess. I think this year it's going to just be boogie boarding or something. No more football.
There you go. Love it. So in all of this, right, you built a new thing. So why don't you talk about kind of your new thing that's become pretty successful?
Yeah. So out of the last show we talked about it, which was Flipping Showdown, what was amazing about it was really HGTV's concept. We had brought some concepts to them and they were like, these are good, but hey, how about this concept? How about we do a big competition series where, we bring 3 couples to Atlanta and they flip some houses. They'll be your houses, but it's almost like a big tryout or an interview for, and the winner of this show gets a Red Barn franchise.
Yep.
We were like, that's an interesting thought. A Red Barn franchise. What would that look like? And again, they are the ones that planted the idea. And from our vantage point, if we're going to do an entire show about a Red Barn franchise, we would be idiots not to have a true Red Barn franchise,
right?
A launch behind the show. And so that's what we did. So while we're filming the show and planning it out behind the scenes, I'm trying to figure out, okay, let's figure out how we're going to build and launch a real franchise to go alongside with the show. And it was like the most amazing commercial you could ever have.
Sure.
For Red Barn. And sure enough, so out of the show, as you know, Colin and Christina ended up winning. You were out, speaking in the house there on Haley Farms, you ended up being really good friends with them because you were kind of working alongside them.
At least once a week. So, yeah, that's cool. And you had to learn franchise law, right? I mean, running a franchise is a whole nother animal, right?
It's a monster, man. It is a monster. But I tapped my brother, who's my older brother, super academic. He was actually the president of San Diego Christian College at the time.
Okay.
And very much academic. He'd been vice provost at Liberty University. And I was like, Kevin, let's do something together. Like, you've got all this experience running, large universities. I know some real estate. Let's do this together. And so he was intrigued. He's like, well, let's take a hard look at it. So him and I, for really about a year, dove into the nuts and bolts, hired multiple attorneys, built out all sorts of software and stuff behind the scenes. And then it was May of 22 when we signed on our first franchisee. And a lot of them had been organic leads that had come out of the show.
Yeah.
And it's just blown up, man. We're in 35 states. We got 125 franchisees now. And it's been incredibly fun. I mean, it's way more rewarding than I even expected. Because you and I, the coaching space, we've done a little bit of coaching here and there.
With you. Yep.
To me, it's just light years ahead of coaching, because there's such a connection now to our franchisees versus coaching. Here's some knowledge, here's some information, good luck. This is like, we're in the trenches together. We're doing deals together. We're giving them financing. We're giving them our tools, our systems, our resources. And there's accountability. There's, weekly calls with them. There's what are you stuck on? There is coaching. We've got coaches on speed dial. So our franchisees get stuck on a deal. How do I write this contract? How much should I offer? What do you think about these comps? And they literally pick up the phone and have one of our coaches on speed dial to help walk them through it. So again, for us, it's this higher level of accountability. It's transparency. That's the beautiful thing about franchises, is every single thing that's going on in our franchise is transparent on the FDD. So there's no mystery.
Sure.
Unlike, like coaching, who knows who's having success and what they're doing. It's just, that's the real Wild West. And there's been a lot of guys that have been locked up over it too.
Well, and in the coaching world, and I helped you with some coaching. I was the speed dial guy, or before Red Barn, but I was the speed dial guy on some of your coaching things. And the frustrating part about especially new people, is you can tell them all the things in the world and give them all the things in the world, but only like 10 to 20% of them actually do anything.
Yeah. I don't get it, man.
They don't take action, right?
They cash out all this, the gobs of money to get this coaching. And then it just blows my mind how many of them just don't do it. It's sort of a lesson in human nature, honestly, watching the whole coaching programs and how they work.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that there's not a small element of that in the franchise, but not nearly to that level,
It's a different animal. I mean, you're giving them in the franchise, you're giving them like let me bring you into this turnkey opportunity, right?
Yep.
Not, here's how you do it, right?
100%. Well, and I think a lot of people get stuck on marketing too. It's like, well, I sent out this one postcard campaign and I didn't get any deals, so it's not for me. Well, as you and I both know, that's not how any of it works. And so we kind of took all that component of like figuring out how to market off of their shoulders and put it on ours and said, look, we're going to do the marketing because we know it works. I'm going to put these leads directly into the CRM so that every day you log in, bam, there's your leads. You don't have to worry about creating for them. It's not a profit center for us. I'm just going to make sure that you do deals. That's the bottom line. I need you to do deals. And so taking some of the hard components, some of the mystery out of operating that business is really where the franchise to me shines.
Yeah. And how many franchisees do you guys have now?
I think we're at 125.
Wow. That's great. Last time we talked like a month ago, you were like, oh, we're signing on our 100th person.
I know, man. It's crazy. We signed on 10 last month, or 9 last month, and we'll probably sign on 6 or 7 this month. I mean, and here's the deal. We're not even, there's a lot more we could be doing to sign on more. We're trying to make it, where we want to have sustainable growth.
Yeah.
I want to know every one of my franchisees. I want to know them by name. I want to know their market. I want to be able to look at their deals. We get into the field. Like if somebody's knocking down deals, I get on a plane, I go out and check out their deals because I want to know them. And you can't do that if you're signing on 15 or 20 a month. I mean, that's not sustainable growth. So for us, it's like measured sustainable growth where we have good relationships with these guys. And it's right now it's a formula that's working.
Yeah, you have to control, and I do that with the, I've mentioned in podcast episodes and all my stuff that I do kind of something similar, but not a franchise, but I'll handle your probate marketing, help you kind of become a probate kind of expert in your market, and we can kind of build this together. But I'm very selective about who I work with because I don't want to grow huge. It's not about the money. To me, it's about building a sustainable brand.
Totally.
And you have to manage that closely. You can't just have any random Yahoo that wants to do it because they can tarnish your brand, right?
100%. 100%. Yep.
Yeah.
Smart.
Well, dude, I love all the success that you've had, and such a great guy. And obviously we live close to one another, and so we kind of run into each other around town sometimes. But Ken, we kind of run out of time here. I got to actually record a podcast episode with an attorney right after this. We got
that sounds boring
coming on my show. So it's actually cool, like learning about probate law in all the different states.
Interesting.
For our listeners, it helps them. Like for people that are in Tennessee, they're like, oh, cool. Like, because Tennessee's the one I'm about to record here. That's how that works in Tennessee. Like probate stuff is about 80% the same across the country. And then there's 20% that's a little different. And each state kind of does it a little differently. So I'm bringing on attorneys from every single state in the U.S. on the show to talk about those things, right? It might be boring to some people, but some people are like, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know I could do that. Like that sort of stuff. So,
well, especially if you're in Tennessee and you want to be in the probates, but it's probably good to know probate law in Tennessee. So
Exactly. Well, hey, Ken, I really appreciate you coming on the show today, man. You brought so much value. If people want to get a hold of you, or if they're interested in talking to you or your team about a franchise opportunity or whatever, how's the best way they can get a hold of you?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And again, thanks for having me on. I've really enjoyed our time. And I think I owe you coffee too. I think it's been too long. We got to sit down and talk some deals. But
do some barbecue.
So there you go. You don't have to twist my arm for barbecue. I'm always down.
I'll meet you at OCP.
There you go. You can check us out at redbarnhomes.com, which is sort of the parent site. There's information on our new construction, on our brokerage, just for investors, but also there's a link to our franchise as well at Red Barn Homes, which takes you to redbarnfranchise.com if you want to learn about potentially partnering with us in your home market to bring a Red Barn franchise there. So, Brad, man, really appreciate you having me on and really enjoyed our time together.
Yeah, man, it's always good chatting with you, and I really appreciate you coming on, man. So thanks again.
All right, buddy. We'll talk soon.
All right, see you.
See you, man.
All right, guys, thanks for checking out another episode of the podcast. Glad to have Ken Corsini on with us today. Like I mentioned before, if you're interested in chatting with us about having us do your probate marketing for you and managing that aspect, you can go to probatehouseguy.com to learn more. All right, thanks again. Have a good day.